GM, good morning. Welcome to the Milk Road Show, the daily crypto show that's confused, anxious, and still pretending everything's fine, just like you. I'm your host, Jay Hamilton. It's Friday, April the 11th. What a week! 75 countries had their tariffs knocked down to 10% for the next 90 days, the 90-day pause. China and the US are at total trade war right now. This has basically become a China-US trade war. It's going back and forth. I can't even keep track. I think the US is up to 145%. I think China on US is around 80 or 90%. I can't even keep track. CPI came out as well, lower than expectations. Inflation isn't a big deal. I hope it's heading in the right direction. That's very good. It came out at 2.4%, down from the expected 2.5% and down from 2.8% last month. How do you make sense of all this? It's so much noise right now. So we had to bring in one of the Bitcoin and crypto OGs. I'm talking about Samson Mow to help us wrap our heads around what is going on right now. Now, Samson is the CEO of Jan3, which works directly with governments and nation states on Bitcoin adoption. He's worked with El Salvador and many others throughout his time. He's also got a knack for breaking down complex market situations like we're in right now in a way that might be understandable to everybody listening in. Before we jump in and hear from Samson, if you guys are swapping, if you're trading, and I know you are during these tumultuous times, you're going to want to check out Milk Road Swap. Why? Got some of the lowest fees in the space. You can trade on Ethereum, Base, and Arbitrum, and Solana all in one place. Check it out today. Today's episode is brought to you by MoonPay. Trade crypto fee-free, fast, and on your terms. It's also brought to you by Coinshift, powering top crypto treasuries with their yield-bearing stablecoin, CSUSDL. Without further ado, Samson, welcome to the Milk Road Show.
Thanks, Jay. Great to be on.
Yeah, pleasure to have you, my man. Okay, we got to talk with the sorry. We got to start with the talk of the day, which is macro tariffs, CPI. I mean, markets are just they continue to show a lot of red. We had a bounce after the 90-day pause, which was good to see. But we're still in a ton of fear and a ton of uncertainty. What's I mean, it's a big question, so you can take it whichever direction. What's your take, your framework, and how you're thinking through all of this macro noise that's happening right now?
Well, you pretty much outlined it. This is a time of massive uncertainty, and it's a time at which people should be questioning, what do these numbers mean and why do they even matter? So tariffs on China are at 145. I saw there's a correction. It's actually 125. Who knows? Retaliatory tariffs from China are at 83, 90. Does it matter? Not really. A 90-day pause. Well, why 90? Why not 180? Why not 365, right? These are all arbitrary numbers. CPI at 2.4, arbitrary number, not the other arbitrary number of 2.5, right? So I think in times like this, you have to really think about why Bitcoin matters. And I'm a Bitcoin maxi, and I think Bitcoin is the future. And it is going back to this rules-based system where you have absolute certainty. You're absolutely certain of the upper limit of Bitcoin. There's 21 million. That's it. And that should be enough to, rebase the entire world's economy on. So that's 2.1 quadrillion Satoshis. And it's just a mathematical formula, and it does not change over time. And that's it. So the way I look at it is this is a ruler. And it's a ruler by which you measure every other thing, just like you measure water in liters and milliliters, and you measure distance in kilometers or miles if you're American. There has to be a unit to measure monetary value, and that is Bitcoin. And this is why I think we will be seeing hyper Bitcoinization, and we'll see everything being priced in terms of Bitcoin or Satoshis. So, yeah, like everything that's happening in the world today really just shows nothing matters except for Bitcoin. That's the only thing that matters. And everything else should be readjusted to be priced in terms of Bitcoin.
I had a good laugh at. I got to bring this tweet up that you shared earlier today, which was Eric Balkunas, who we've had on the show before from Bloomberg, tweeted out that the S&P 500 is as volatile as Bitcoin is now. So you talk about everything being measured in Bitcoin. I did not think I would see the day when the S&P 500 and Bitcoin matched in volatility. At least not this early. I thought that might be still a few years away, but it's a very uncertain time right now. I mean, and as you say, I really do. I like your take that, does all of this stuff matter? You can really get caught up in the narratives. And right now, tariffs is the narrative. Is it going to be the narrative forever? No, it's not. This will pass. It feels like right now, like it's going to last forever. And it feels like it's going to change the world. And it feels like there is no end in sight. But it will pass and it will change, and you've got to have that zoom out perspective, which is what I think you're leading towards, is not to get so caught up in the moment and and a lot of people make mistakes because so much fear leads you to make adjustments to your portfolio. And we've been saying it for a while. I have I'm the one thing I am certain about right now, and I'm certainly in a position when you have this much uncertainty where I try not to be overconfident, because you can really get overconfident in these moments sometimes, and that can be really bad. But the one thing I'm certain about is my conviction for Bitcoin only is growing as a result of this current situation of the last few months. Because, as you said, all roads really do lead to Bitcoin in a case like this. Let's talk about the state of government and nation state adoption of Bitcoin, because that's really where you spend all your days, all your hours. And we haven't had a guest on the show really break down the current state of government adoption. I mean, everybody's aware that El Salvador is big in Bitcoin. I think our listeners might know about Bhutan and some of the other countries and what they're doing. And everybody obviously knows that Trump signed the executive order to have a U.S. strategic reserve. But I don't think people don't have nearly the understanding that you have. What give us the current state as you see it? Like, which are there countries that maybe people don't know that are buying and owning Bitcoin, and give us that sort of that overview before we dive into it.
Yeah, so there are probably a number of countries that are quietly accumulating, and we see little bits and pieces here and there, and a lot of times it's accidental that it's revealed. Like Bhutan was a secret until they got caught up in, I think, the Celsius filings, and it was revealed that they were holding Bitcoin, and then they kind of came out publicly and said, we're mining Bitcoin with excess energy, and they've published some of their balances. So it's almost like the incentive is for countries to quietly accumulate until they can't. But then you also have cases like the US where they're making a big proclamation that we are going to go into Bitcoin in a big way. And I think that's actually more likely because it's difficult for countries to hide things from the public, or at least ideally it shouldn't be the case, because the governments need to be accountable to the people. And if they're doing things in secret, that's not really the ideal situation. So I think going forward, you'll see more proclamations like we are implementing a strategic reserve. We're going to be buying Bitcoin. We're going to be mining Bitcoin. And that's sort of where we come in as Gen 3. It's our mission to work with governments to implement Bitcoin strategies for the sake of world prosperity. And I think there are many pitfalls that governments can go into when they're trying to figure out what they want to do with Bitcoin, right? There are people out there trying to conflate Bitcoin and crypto. And I know some of your audience is crypto, but I think you have to segment the market. There's Bitcoin, there's crypto, and then stable coins. So there are distinct pockets of different types of things that you can invest in. And you need to really be able to distinguish between the different things. So when Trump was trying to start the U.S. on the path of strategic crypto adoption, there was talk of, is it a strategic Bitcoin reserve or a strategic crypto reserve? And there was a time at which it looked like they wanted to stick a bunch of other crypto in there, like American-made cryptos. And I think that really opens the door to, uh, you know, real degeneracy, right? Like if you start adding every single crypto or selected ones, you're kind of picking winners and losers. And where's the line cut off? Is it meme coins too or not? Because what is the difference really between an old meme coin like Doge that is relatively decentralized and still based off proof of work versus something like I don't know, the newer dog coins. I don't even know the names now, but the that can get really bad really quickly. So I guess what we try to do is steer governments to just focus on Bitcoin. If you want to take a libertarian leaning and say everything's okay, then just let everything else proliferate. But focus your messaging, focus your effort, focus your attention on Bitcoin, and that's it. Otherwise, you're getting into a really difficult game of trying to police, regulate, and select good coins to kind of put into a reserve or to adopt in some form or fashion.
Let's be honest, everything in crypto comes with fees. But here's a nice surprise: MoonPay Balance doesn't take a cut. You heard that right. No MoonPay fees when you buy or sell crypto with your MoonPay Balance. Top up with dollars, pounds, or euros, then you're ready to trade instantly whenever the market moves. And if you change your mind, withdraw your cash. No MoonPay fee there either. Simple, fast, ready when you are. Check it out at milkroad.com/MoonPay. Disclaimer: network and ecosystem fees apply. Meet CS/USDL, the stablecoin built for institutions and DAOs. Don't just hold basic stablecoins, earn yield, all without compromising security. Backed by regulated real-world assets and secured with institutional-grade risk management by our friends at Steakhouse Financial, put your treasury cash to work, earning native yield and protocol rewards. Built by the team behind Coinshift, which is trusted to manage over $1 billion in business treasuries on-chain, including Aave, Gitcoin, and hundreds of leading institutions. CYCS USDL is gaining traction at milkroad.com/Coinshift. And what's the current knowledge, would you say, of governments and central banks and treasuries understanding Bitcoin? I mean, obviously, I think we all understand the US and what their knowledge is, and some other countries as well have taken the spotlight. But there's really only, like, it feels like I can't remember the exact number, but I think there's about 10 countries that officially hold Bitcoin. Now, most of those countries didn't actually buy it.
Caesar.
They got it through seizures, right? So, like, do you even count those, right? But that's a low number in where we all think this is going, right? Where eventually all governments will own Bitcoin, and it'll replace gold as digital gold and be this, global reserve asset, right? So, is is you give me, like, is 10 the actual number? Is it more than that? Can you even talk about this stuff?
Well, it's a very fuzzy line. There are, like government entities that are actively involved, right? It may not be at top federal levels, but there are provincial, municipal entities that are, actively involved, particularly in mining in different places around the world. So it's not as clean cut as this country is adopting, and it's a top down initiative, and they have these policies in place. It's a much messier landscape than most people would estimate it to be. But I think it will become a more predominant pressing topic, especially with the tariffs, what's looking like a currency war, and what's looking potentially like a sovereign debt crisis too. So we're going to start to see a lot more movement towards Bitcoin, and it has a lot to do with the U.S. So you're asking earlier, how is the understanding? I think there is a decent understanding. At least there is an understanding that Bitcoin is valuable, and Bitcoin is the best performing asset probably ever. But the concern really is career risk, or political career risk in this case, whereby it's risky for them to push for something until someone else does it in a big way to eliminate the career risk. And you see this with the ETFs. So Hong Kong and Australia followed suit after the US and SEC kind of blessed it and BlackRock went out. And I think more and more countries are opening up. I think Korea, Japan now are opening the doors to ETF access, Bitcoin ETF access. But it's the same for like spot or mining adoption of Bitcoin. There is a perceived risk, which is diminishing by the day as the US moves further and further into implementation stages. But I think it's really just the rest of the world is waiting to see. And it's quite kind of sad that countries should be willing to, take a risk, even if it's a small risk. And at this point, it's a really calculated and minimal risk too. Like allocating 1% of GDP to accumulate Bitcoin is almost like a minuscule insurance policy, if anything. But countries are looking at ways they can protect themselves. And as the world is kind of splintering into a more multipolar, more dissected political and power structure, I think countries are going to start to look really seriously at their Bitcoin policies and what they're doing to kind of protect themselves. And it's like going back to a gold standard, but in this case, it's digital gold, whereby you have reserves. And the point of having reserves is for power, negotiating leverage, or having the ability to mine Bitcoin and process your own transactions, which allows you to freely transact without anyone censoring you too. So everything is moving faster. I think we're wired to think the adoption is going to take 20 years, 30 years. But if you look at everything that's happening in the world today, the timeline is just rapidly accelerating. Like the nation state attack was, I would say, China cracking down on Bitcoin exchanges and mining. And then you had El Salvador adopting Bitcoin. And then you have countries mining Bitcoin. And now you have the US, which is a massive indicator of Bitcoin adoption moving forward. And it's just a matter of time before legislation turns into active buy pressure. And it could definitely be this year. At least I think they're targeting this year.
They are.
But
Yeah.
but more so than that, they actually need to be buying this year. It's not about what they want, it's about necessity. And you can see some of this leaking out through initiatives like Department of Government Efficiency. Why the sudden pivot to cut costs and save? Because I think they realized the US is far too much in debt. The debt is yet to be refinanced, and it could be at a higher rate than they would like, which accelerates the debt spiral and it decreases the credit worthiness of the US. But all of these things seem to be an effort, including tariffs, to distract or mitigate the current economic situation and restore sound money.
You brought up that it's not just at the federal level, and I got to bring up this news because I just think that everybody's going to miss it otherwise. Which is that New Hampshire, the House in New Hampshire passed their bill for a strategic Bitcoin reserve at the state level. We've seen Texas has also done this. I think Utah, I can't remember exactly where they are, but there's a bunch of states in the U.S. that are in progress
Yep.
to having their own strategic Bitcoin reserve. Is this a milestone? I mean, obviously the US, the federal is a bigger milestone. Is the states doing this a milestone? Does it move the needle at all? Or I guess let me ask you that question first, then I'll ask you my follow-up.
Well, it depends. The real litmus test is buying. The legislation is kind of the setup to get to the point of buying. And it takes time. Like even after legislation is passed, I would assume there are more procedural things like, is it self-custodied? How is that set up? Is it with a custodian? There is an order of operations to get to the stage at which you're buying, but I think they have to accelerate that. And there are lots of really well qualified Bitcoiners and companies in the U.S. that are positioned to help with that. But the race is on. Either it's going to happen first at the state level, or it will happen first at the federal level, or another country is going to step in and start buying. But the tariff situation and also the weakness in demand for US treasuries, I think, will start to funnel money from other countries into Bitcoin. Because if you think about everything on a very high level, where are you going to park your capital? Are you going to put it in real estate? And it certainly doesn't help that Besant is saying things like, Chinese stocks can be removed from the stock exchanges. There is rumblings of like, eminent domain, like seizing assets. All of these things will spook other sovereign nations to do anything with US assets, right? Whether it's a US based ETF, or if it's just equities, or if it's treasuries or real estate. And when you ask yourself that question, what is the answer? Where do you go? It is just Bitcoin. There's really nothing else that is fully decentralized, permissionless, and without any interested party controlling it. So I see that we're going to see a massive flight of capital into Bitcoin. And you compound that with the tariffs and the trade war and fear of the Chinese yuan devaluing. And that just makes it even more likely and faster that capital will flow into Bitcoin.
One, there's so many ways that we can take this right now, and so many questions I have. One, one thing that's been brought up was the narrative, and the narrative's changing so fast right now. But a lot of people early this week were talking about Bitcoin is finally decoupling from the Nasdaq and from trading like a tech stock, a high risk tech stock, which is how it's traded historically. If you look at the patterns for its most of its existence, and because we're all waiting for that moment, right? Like that feels inevitable that it will happen because Bitcoin is digital gold, and we have this a real we really in the last 6 months, I think we have this shift that's happening in the biggest players recognizing that, and Trump signing the executive order saying that we should have a US strategic reserve. Things like that really indicate that Abu Dhabi buying, was it 500 $600 million of Bitcoin in Q1, right? Their sovereign wealth fund. Like, these things really say to me, hey, we have a different buyer of Bitcoin that is going to see it as a reserve asset that's different than in the past. And but then what happened this week was everyone was like, oh, we're decoupling, but then Bitcoin did drop eventually. And this tends to happen every time. The stock market will drop first every time there's some sort of macro event or scare. Stock market drops first. I don't know why, actually. I can't tell why. I don't know if anybody knows. If you guys know, comment and let me know why. But usually a few days or a week later is when Bitcoin drops. Do you, when do you think we might get this decoupling, or do you have any ideas of what is the point at which Bitcoin will truly start to trade more like gold? And gold's rising right now as that hedge against inflation, right? It has been compared to, although actually Bitcoin gold is fairly similar in terms of where it's been in the past. I think if you look at the past like 3 6 months. But when do you think that decoupling might happen?
Well, from my perspective, we've been decoupling for the last 16 years, right? You don't
Mm.
go from zero to, whatever we at now, like 70, 80,000 without decoupling from the system. And I think the recent decoupling where equities went down and we stayed steady is a very pertinent indicator that people should be paying a lot of attention to. Because when we are aligned with stocks and we move with stocks, people kind of assume Bitcoin is a tech stock, right? But it is not. It is the ruler by which you measure everything else. There are only 21 million coins. And I don't think people really understand that that level of scarcity means there are no undos. There's no take backsies. Once the Bitcoin is gone, it is gone. Once it's off market into the hands of a seller with no intent to sell, that's it. There is no more. You can't make more. You can make an altcoin, but you can't make more Bitcoin, right? So I think you're going to see Sailor and MicroStrategy, or Strategy now, keep buying, taking coins off the market. They've already took double the amount of mined coins off this year. We're already seeing the public mining companies stop selling and just borrow and get more Bitcoin. You're seeing GameStop making their foray into this. And as we talked about before, states, nation states, they are all starting to get ready to buy. And most of the Bitcoin supply has been mined already. So there's like maybe 1 million coins left to be mined for the next 100 odd years. So where are we going to get more coins? As soon as all of that buy pressure culminates, you're going to see the price move. You're going to see everything massively decouple. Bitcoin is going to take off like a rocket ship. And that's the thesis behind the Omega candle, right? We're just going to see a supply shock that triggers a massive green candle up. And that's going to trigger more green candles because FOMO is really what drives everything, right? Nobody thinks ahead. Nobody does the research, nobody understands it, but when it goes up and it decouples, people pay attention and they allocate, and that's it.
Yeah, certainly nothing makes people allocate like price go up, which is backwards for investors. You should buy when price is not going up and sell when price is going up. Not that you should ever sell your Bitcoin. I'm not trying to cue that up, but it's a difficult thing to. I mean, and the Omega candle, which you've been promoting for a while, and I mean, you put out a tweet just the other day, and I mean, you're known for putting out tweets like this. Bitcoin is just going to skyrocket upwards, and no one will be expecting it. Any thoughts on like timing right now? I know you're not a macro expert. It's very difficult to predict timing in macro situations like this. But what's your short, medium term thesis on what you think we could see for the rest of this year?
I mean, I honestly think we should have hit 200,000, and it shocks me every day that we're not at 200,000 yet. And that sentiment is echoed by, a macro expert. The CIO of Bitwise has said the same thing. We should already be at
Yeah.
200,000. It's just crazy that we're not there, and we're sub 100 now even. So I think it's just fear can push it down. There's 2 million coins on exchanges that are sloshing around that allow for price to be suppressed, and the whole hodlers, the long-term holders of Bitcoin, don't really have an impact. All they do is they coil the spring more tightly because they're not selling and they're accumulating more. So the price is a very short-term thing that can suddenly dissociate. You can suddenly see a big jump, and we've certainly seen this in Bitcoin's history, right? In 2017, we went up 17x, right? It's definitely possible that this happens again, and you just see a massive jump, especially with the state of the world as it is today. All those things we talked about: economic uncertainty, trade wars, currency wars, sovereign debt crises, these things can definitely move Bitcoin. If we can do a 17x when absolutely nothing was happening, we can definitely do a 17x when the world is on fire.
Yeah. It's I mean, I your comment from Matt Hogan, CIO of Bitwise, who's come on the show a bunch and has expressed the exact same thing, that he, is if this is it feels like a bit of a gift right now and a buying opportunity that I don't think any of us thought we were going to see, mainly because tariffs were a shock. Although the liquidity cycle, quantitative tightening has been going longer than any of us expected as well, and the liquidity cycle is not picking up as much as we thought it would early in this year, and so that is also pushed out later, which is also a big factor in this current event that's happening right now. A lot of people are saying, "Oh, it's only tariffs," but there is other factors at play for sure.
Yeah, I would say the hash rate is a good indicator of what's to
Mm.
come. So if you look at hash rate, it's just going up nonstop. And what that should tell you is that there is a structural and fundamental change in the nature of miners. They are price insensitive now, or profit insensitive. They don't really care about profitability. It used to be that they would be very worried about when they're going to recoup their initial investments, or when they're going to break even, and then when they can start making pure profit in Bitcoin mining. But that's changed now. And I think it has a lot to do with sovereign mining, where energy cost is effectively zero. It is their own energy, it's excess energy or whatever it is, I don't know, but they don't care. So they're just adding more and more hash rate. It could be Russia, it could be other countries with excess, and who knows? But that's definitely a structural change. And what that means is we have that same structural change coming for Bitcoin buying. And it's evident too, like MicroStrategy. It is indiscriminate at which price it buys, because I think, like us, Saylor believes this is also a gift. Anything under 100 or even 200 is a gift. He doesn't care if he's paying a premium at this point. And then the question you have to ask yourself is GameStop the same? Is Rumble the same? Are all these other companies that are starting to add to their corporate balance sheets also price indiscriminate? And then what about nation states? I think they're definitely price indiscriminate. Once it becomes a race to print your money to buy Bitcoin, then all the gloves are off. It's just let's escape the fiat system while we can.
Mhm. I want to come back to your comment on sovereign nations using their energy to mine Bitcoin. So this is like, is Bhutan? I mean, El Salvador is doing this. Bhutan is doing this, correct? So this is where they're using like excess energy that's like available. Nobody, it's not being used for anything else, and then they use that energy to mine Bitcoin for the nation. Like that is, and is that a when you talk to nation states, is that the way that they're interested in getting involved versus buying?
That should be the way they're interested, but like I said before, there is a lot of concern over career risk. Like, are you going to be the MP or congressman in your country that's going to stand up and say, here's a bill to start mining Bitcoin and risk something, right? I don't think that's the case yet, but Bhutan is a very powerful beacon because they've done it. There is a track record that you can look at and you can see what they did exactly and how much Bitcoin they got, and you can see the benefits too. Like, this is free money, and they're going to be selling some Bitcoin to build an airport, a really cool looking new airport.
Really? Really? So
Yeah,
they are now monetizing some of the Bitcoin that they have mined in
exactly.
order to benefit their and we're talking about Bhutan, which is not a wealthy country.
Yeah, well, now it is, but it just goes to show you have to present the full playbook. Like, theoretically, everyone should have realized this 10 years ago. But someone's got to do it first, and everyone's got to copy them because that's just the way it works. But we've been engaged with governments with a lot of geothermal potential, and we've talked to them for years. And I think now the wheels are starting to turn because you can point to this thing and say, hey, they did A, and now they're at B. And it's just, you cannot disregard that anymore. And I think that's just going to accelerate because what else are you going to do with all that stranded energy or untapped energy? You have to do something with it, especially if you want an airport or you want high speed rail or you want new highway infrastructure or you want, whatever.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, it's very interesting to consider that they need the full playbook. That's a really good point. I had more thought about it from the perspective of a a government buying Bitcoin in the same way that they would buy gold as just a reserve asset, but mining it as part of the playbook of reserve of this excess energy. Yeah, fascinating to really think that through.
Yeah.
What's going on with Thailand? I know that Thailand has also been talking a lot about adopting crypto, adopting Bitcoin. What's happening there?
We'll see, but we visited. We've met with some of the government officials, and I think that definitely could be an interesting one to look at in the coming months and weeks.
Okay, take that for what it is. Thanks, Samson. That's exciting. We'll see. We'll see what happens next with Thailand. I've got to ask this question, and shoot me if you get to ask this all the time. But just because of the documentary Money Electric that came out recently, and you working on that and being involved with that, do you know who Satoshi is?
No, I don't think Satoshi is anybody that's out here doing interviews or going to conferences. I haven't met anybody that kind of would indicate that that's Satoshi.
And do we need to know who Satoshi is?
No, because if we did know Satoshi, then I think Satoshi would be in a world of trouble because, you can't create this new monetary paradigm and not have people try to influence you to influence that protocol.
Yeah, and is there the only reason why I think people are so obsessed with Satoshi is quite honestly the money side of it. He's just got so much Bitcoin, which is worth so much. If if he didn't hold all of that, he, she, whoever it is, we don't know, hold all of that, then people might actually, n- quite frankly, not be so obsessed with it. Is there concern around the amount of Bitcoin that Satoshi has? Like, does that cause concern for you if they were to come back and if they were to, sell it or put it on the market? Is that concerning at all for you?
Not really. I mean, you could say that Satoshi has a million coins, but that's an estimate. There is no concrete proof, right? That's the whole point of Bitcoin.
Really?
You can't
Really,
really
we don't
tell.
concretely know
No,
actually how many
it's a
Satoshi has.
presumption. It's
Okay.
called Satoshi, and you can say maybe it's him, but you don't know for sure, right? Just like if you pass your private key to someone else, do you still have the Bitcoin? If you destroyed your key and gave it to them, then it's not yours anymore, right? So you have to be comfortable with Bitcoin And this idea that you can't really know who has Bitcoin or how much Bitcoin anyone has, right? You can estimate and approximate and guess, but you don't know for sure. The only way you know for sure is if someone proves it. And, there is no proof that Satoshi has those coins. But assuming he does still have them, it doesn't really matter because a million coins is nothing. If you look at the rate of consumption of Bitcoin by all of these entities, if he wanted to sell, that would just be absorbed in, at this rate, a matter of months.
Right. It's a good point. It would be absorbed relatively quickly. I mean, we saw the market absorb Germany's Bitcoin last summer. How do you think Germany feels right now? I mean, I guess it's been well, actually when they sold, what they would have sold at what we would have been around
50s,
60, 50, 50
something like that.
somewhere there. How do they feel? Did you ever talk to them? Like, what were they doing? Why did they sell it?
Well, it was Saxony. It wasn't federal funds of Germany, but we were engaged with Joanna Kotar and her group, the Bitcoin and Buddhist group, and they were actually writing letters to the Saxony government saying don't sell, but they didn't respond. So I think a lot of Germans that are aware of Bitcoin, especially Bitcoiners, of course, are just in disbelief that that happened. But you know, there's still a chance to buy back some of it. It's not too
Mhm.
late, but it will become too late at some point. But I think Germany has bigger things to deal with. There is a massive influx of ESG think, and that's destroyed their energy sector. And now with security an issue, I think they're going to ramp up military spending. But it's almost like for Germany, Bitcoin is the least of their troubles. They have several other higher priority things to deal with first before they look at Bitcoin. But it's definitely up there in the mix. Like, you need Bitcoin as a sovereign nation now. And the reasons are the same as any country wanting gold. You wanted gold, now you want Bitcoin.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a good reminder that we're not the only show in town, and there is other things happening and other things to worry about and other priorities other than Bitcoin and crypto and the future of finance. But it is so fun. We love talking about it. So everybody else jump in, right? Uh, Samson, absolute pleasure to get you on the show today. Really appreciate your time. Before I let you go, any any predictions for where you think Bitcoin could go once this macro stuff clears out? So whether it lasts a week or 2 weeks, I know you said you think we should be at 200K. Any predictions where you think we could be end of this year or within the next few years?
Well, my prediction is that we'll hit 1 million this year. So we'll see what happens.
Really? You're a 1 million this year. Whoa.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's not once the macro stuff clears out, it's the macro stuff pushing us there. If you look at
Mhm.
the state of the world, debt is not getting less for any country. It's getting more and it's getting higher and higher, and something has to break eventually. And in this world where trust is rapidly declining, alliances and partnerships at the nation state level are dropping, everyone's going to look to defend their own. And to do that, you need a Bitcoin strategy.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm 1 million within 5 years. I'm not 1 million within this year, but I'm bullish. Maybe just not quite as perma bullish as you are. Samson, thanks again for joining us today. Really appreciate your time, and shout out to the whole Jan 3 team because the work you guys are doing is very important work for the entire space and really leading the way with so many countries. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jay. It's been fun.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode, y'all. Hope you enjoyed it. If you want to go to one of the best crypto conferences of the year, you got to check out Avalanche Summit in London, May 20th to the 22nd. One of a kind. It's a retreat style conference, retreat style experience. Super interesting. They've got a whole blend of sessions for developers, founders, investors, the future of crypto. It's going to be a really unique and different type of conference. Highly recommend you guys check it out. Don't miss your chance. Grab tickets. Click the link in the show notes. Hope to see you there. As always, if you liked today's episode, please hit subscribe and make sure you follow us so you don't miss out on the next one. There's also a link in the description to our free 5-minute daily newsletter where we simplify crypto crypto for you while making you laugh. And if you're willing to step up your crypto investing game, we're going to also leave a link for Milk Road Pro. You get access to our portfolio where you can see exactly what we are buying. This is your number one resource to help you invest successfully in crypto. One final note, this show is for educational purposes only, and nothing we say is financial advice. Investing in crypto or any asset is risky, and you should never invest more than you can afford to lose. Thanks so much for listening in, my friends. Have a wicked awesome day.